Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Field Engineer channel. My name is Guy, and on this channel, we discuss topics of interest to field engineers and managers. I have with me today Frank Pemberton. Frank joined the field engineering community in April of 2023. He's a field service engineer based out of San Antonio, Texas, and he has a rich career in the field service of medical devices with many reputable companies in the last 20 years or so. Welcome, Frank. I'm happy to have you with me today.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Guy. Happy to
So,
be here.
Frank, let's start with a bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your career track, your education.
Sure. I live in San Antonio, of course, and married and have three boys at home. I got my career many years ago. Thankful to the U.S. Air Force for training me in electronics and really giving me a career that I never had to look back on. So I spent many years, almost 20 years in semiconductors. I have a very rich laser optical background in semiconductors, also ion implantation, as you say, some very big companies. And then out of necessity, I got into medical devices because my wife had moved to El Paso and there's no semiconductor plants in El Paso that I know about. So I answered an ad and it was sort of God's will that I got into medical devices, and I never looked back. And it's been, I calculated this morning, almost 20 years as well, which seems incredible. But that's where I'm at now and quite happy with it. And learning and evolving every day, I think, is the best way I could look at that career. Most careers these days.
That's very true, and especially in the medical devices field, it's a field that evolves quickly. Technology is changing, and it's a field that never stops because of the necessity of medical devices, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's very competitive. Company I'm with currently, it's always, you're always developing new procedures, new technologies, and of course, field service are always learning new procedures and new instructions, and it's always evolving. You're never really resting in your laurels. You're always on the go and also learning and improving every day.
Yeah, yeah. Frank, you wrote articles for the field engineering community about motivation for field service engineers on the job. What are your thoughts on that topic?
Well, currently, yeah, the motivation. To me comes from within. And the motivation for anyone working on medical devices is who's affected by the work that we do. And that answer is very simple. It's the patient. The customer is, of course, hospitals, but the person that's affected is the patient. So for me to get motivated and to be motivated daily is just doing the job properly, doing the job in its entirety, not so much how much time is it going to take me, but just doing the job in thoroughness, knowing that the next day when the customer texts me at 8 a.m., Frank, are we good to go? Absolutely. You give them a thumbs up, and at the same time, you're building that trust, but you just always remember, and I've always encountered this even early on when I switched into medical, that I would see families in a waiting room, and one time they looked at me and they said, "Should we be worried that you're here?" And I said, "No, actually, you should be happy that I'm here, because if something happens, I'll be able to fix the machine." So early on, I saw the effect firsthand, and that to me is a very big motivator.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's the thing that keeps you going, right? I mean,
Yes.
day in and day out, there's no one to pat you on the back and to say, you did well. You
Yes.
see it with customers when they are happy that the instrument is working, the patients are able to be diagnosed or treated, right? And that's
Yes.
that's our motivation and our satisfaction.
That's right. Yeah. The treatment plan and one of my previous jobs, cancer treating equipment, the treatment plans are not 1 day or 2 days. They were 8 to 10 days, maybe longer. And so if the machine that I worked on, which was a Linear Accelerator, went down during the middle of somebody's treatment, guess what? They didn't get to reconvene in 2 days. A lot of times they had to start over because it's an accumulative treatment plan. And
Mm,
so we were under quite a bit of pressure. There were a lot of, I would say, not even late nights, early mornings that we were trying to get this thing fixed so that the next day the treatment plan was not interrupted. So that was definitely patient first, trying to do everything you can to not disrupt that treatment plan.
Right. And that's why we are there, to make sure things continue working flawlessly.
Right.
And that brings something also to the mix, which is stress, right? You are there, you need to have all the tools and all the parts that you might need so that in your first visit, you're able to fix the instrument and make it working again. And you wrote you wrote an article also about stress management for the field service engineer on the job. If you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with stress and how you handle it.
Well, I want to say, Guy, stress management. What are you talking about, stress management? As a joke. But of course, we do know day in and day out, there are many stressors. The stress of the timeline, the stress of trying to estimate accurately how long it will take you to fix the machine, the product, the instrument. It's always my favorite question is how long will it take for you to fix it? You don't know. You try to come prepared. The stress you manage internally and you manage it also with empathy. So you empathize with the customer and you let them know that you're aware of their concerns and you understand the deadlines, and you understand that patients need to be treated, but you don't let that stress overcome you. You don't let the stress take control because you know yourself, you're in a situation where you can easily fog up. You're distracted. You're letting the focal point of your thoughts be the stress, and that's not what you want to do. You want to put the stress aside. You want to focus on the issue at hand, resolve the issue, as quickly as possible with the best care, communicate well with the customer. And if you need to take a break, I'm not above walking away for a few minutes, maybe getting a quick something to drink, a soda or whatever, or just taking a walk around the area, go down to the lobby, go down to just take a walk away from it. You don't want to be gone too long, but it helps clear your thoughts. And sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes you're too close to the problem. You need to back away a little bit, like, whoa, am I missing something here? Oh, go back to the basics almost. But yeah, never let the stress manage your mindset or take away from your ability to do the job that you were hired and trained to do. That's
Right.
number one.
Right. It's self-confidence, knowing that you can tap into your experience and knowledge. And also, there's another lifeline, which is calling a friend.
Oh,
Someone
always.
might give you a different angle because you are so
Yes.
focused and so
Yeah.
stuck on one thought. Maybe you need
Yeah.
someone to steer you away from that into maybe some other possibilities.
Yeah. And the company I'm with currently, all companies typically in biomedical medical devices have excellent technical support. Majority of them are already from the field. They've been out in the field. They're level fours, whatever. And a lot of times I'll call them not to bother them because they're quite busy. But if I need like you said, a second brain, because currently I'm on second shift. But fortunately for me, California is 2 hours behind me, so I have a little bit of leeway. But I try not to call people at midnight. They're still quite late. But a lot of times I'll do it for a sanity check. Hey, this is what I saw. This is what I did. Is this normal? What do you think? Just take a look at the log in with me, if you will, and just for confirmation. But other times you're right. A lot of times you're stuck so deep into the problem that it takes another person that's not there in front of the machine with you, or just somebody that has a different viewpoint or has a different approach or a different angle to the problem. A lot of times, you're coming in very linear, right? You're not thinking outside of that, you know, exact issue that you're troubleshooting at the moment. A lot of times you just need a different set of a different brain. Somebody to say, you know what, did you think about doing this? And a lot of times, click. All right, I didn't, but I appreciate you saying that.
Oh,
And yeah, it's always, you never want to feel alone on any problem or issue. All the companies have a good support infrastructure, escalation. infrastructure. And that should give you enough deep-seated confidence that if you really get stuck, you got a way out, or you at least, like you say, I'm going to phone a friend. My friend is tech support.
And that relieves the stress a little bit also, because you are not alone. You might
Yeah.
be alone physically on site, but
Yes.
you have collective brains that you can reach anytime you need to.
Very, very, very
That's
true.
brain power.
Yes.
So talking about that, how do you make sure that you are always ready for the day and to perform in an optimal way for the customers?
It's a very good question. And my shift is currently 2 to 11. So I always try to rest in the morning a little bit, but about 2 hours or 1 hour ahead of time, I'll look at my schedule. I already know what I'm going to work on. I'll know where I'm going, what the issue is. It might be a routine preventative maintenance. It might be a part replacement. I'll actually pull up the procedure. And I'm a little bit old school. A lot of times I like to print the procedure. It's just how I do things. And I like to use a pen, and I like to check off as I go through the list. I always go ahead and kind of get my brain into the groove of what I'm going to do that evening. Maybe I need a special tool. It happened the other night. It's like, you know what? I don't have a large flat blade. Let me get a large flat blade, because this part, is something I may not have a tool for, or a strap wrench or whatever. But it also kind of gets you thinking about the job ahead, and you just get in your mind mentally prepared, so that you're not getting to the site and thinking, oh, I wish I'd looked at this an hour ago when I was home. You want to go ahead and start planning ahead, because actually it just makes for a smoother workflow, if you will. And let's say you forget your charger. That's why I always print the procedure. At least something crazy happens, I've got a printed copy of what I need to do. And I'm, like you say earlier, you got to prepare. Make sure you're ready for the job, because that customer is relying on you. Those patients are relying on you. If you're in the medical devices, just go prepared. That's a very good point. So that's how I do it.
Yeah,
I go ahead and
most
start
definitely.
planning.
And that's the
Yeah,
right way. I describe it as the visualization that an athlete would do before performing in the Olympics or any other competition. When you see yourself step by step, leaving home, going on site, which module is going to touch, it really pops up, the thoughts that, oh, okay, for this module, I need this part, I need this tool, and so on and so forth. Preparedness is so critical, as you said.
yeah, because then there's always the unexpected. The other night I was prepared to go into a job and do this procedure on this instrument, and guess what? At 4:30 I got a text. Oh, Frank, by the way, this other instrument, we really need you on that one. We need a part right away. So all of a sudden, I had to flip my whole. I forget what I was planning. That moved. I need parts now, and we were switching. Had some switches going on at work, so we were learning a new database, and so the night changed quickly. So you also find out that this career is very dynamic. Never expect that it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because at the drop of a hat, one text is like, we need this. And she told me, she said, I have a very important procedure tomorrow. Can you fix it tonight? And you know what? 1 a.m. I got it fixed, because I had a little trouble getting the parts. But so I guess the moral is, you can plan, but that doesn't mean that your plans won't change. So be willing to be flexible. You have to be flexible.
Yeah.
Customer needs you to do this. You have to rearrange. Ironically, it was the same customer, so I was still going to the same hospital, but a different machine, different problem. I got through it. It was a long night, but the next morning she sort of asked me, "Can we use that machine?" I said, "Yeah, you're ready to go," and it was all thumbs up. So that moment, the heart emoji on the text that everything's good to go, then makes it worthwhile. So you can prepare and plan all day, but a lot of times you have to be willing and sometimes expecting that your plans can change. So
Most definitely. And you mentioned earlier printing your procedures and checklists. I want to mention here a good book to our viewers and listeners. It's called The Checklist Manifesto. And if I remember well, it talks about a surgeon and, how checklists, even pilots have checklists. So we cannot minimize the importance of following procedures and having things clear and ready in front of us.
Yeah, it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I was texting a colleague from my previous job, which was not surgical instruments by no means. It was medical devices, but not directly surgical devices. He goes, Frank, aren't you scared to work on products that treat people directly? And my response was, I didn't even think about it. I mean, it was very quick. I said, no, we have checklists and we have work lists. And as long as you follow those work list and checklist, like you're saying, you do everything, you sign it, and you say, we're good to go. It gets sent to the customer. The customer knows you followed this checklist. So actually, the answer to him was not really. I mean, I'm just working on another device that just so happens to be used to perform surgery on patients, but I have checklists and I have work lists. So as long as I do everything the company suggests and I sign it off, then we're good to go. So that's a really good point. Surgeons, pilots, even sometimes I'll be in the ORs and I'll see there's checklist on the board for a patient with a specific surgery. Let's do this, let's do that. So that flow is very important. Workflows, checklist. I think you should be mindful. If nothing else, it's a sanity checklist to make sure that, we're human. Make sure we didn't forget something. And I always tell people that were hired newer than me, just take your time. Don't worry about the time crunch or the time that you think you should be able to do. Just do the job completely and with good quality. And then afterwards say, oh, that took me 3 hours. The time shouldn't matter. It's the quality and ensuring that you do all the checks. I think is the most important.
I cannot agree more. Quality is really the essential part, and checklists guarantee quality. I mean, can you imagine a surgeon going through a surgery without his checklist to make sure all the equipment is available and ready, or even a pilot?
That's what I was thinking. I would be really worried if I was sitting in the front and I saw the pilot pick up a book and say, "Oh, we don't need this. Let's just go. We're going to Burbank."
Yeah.
Burbank. I would be a little worried. And yeah, certainly surgeons practice, and they practice with a lot of our machines. They have two surgeons. One's in training. One's the primary. One's in training, and they have the ability to both take turns or share. So the checklist and the workflows. That's all very, very important. And I don't think anyone should not take those seriously. I mean, you might find yourself looking for a different job because there's no room for failure. But I don't look at that as a stressor. I look at that as just a good habit of following flows and making sure the job's done completely every time, each and every time. So for me, it's I think more helpful than just willy-nilly not having a workflow unless winging it. I mean, that your results are going to be sporadic like your work. So it helps ensure things are done properly. And it gives you the peace of mind that when you leave a job and you close your toolbox, it's going to be good. And then that confidence that you have now, you're going to share it with the customer, and the customer's going to say, great, thank you. We're going to carry on our day. So it's a good way to, keep things in check and also keep yourself honest and just do the job the best you can every time. And you're also building a great relationship. You're building trust, not only trust with your colleagues, but you're also building trust with the customer. And then the next time something comes up, they're like, oh, great. Can you take care of it? Of course I can take care of it. And right away, you're already starting to minimize those stressors, and you're already starting to build that relationship. And, it just helps you function better at work when people believe in you and people trust you. It's a great way to do business. And it's repeat business. It's also repeat business.
Exactly.
They're going to want you to.
Especially that it builds your reputation and it
Yes.
builds your brand. We
Yes.
hear a lot about
True.
brand and branding.
True.
This is branding. Frank is someone who doesn't forget something, a detail before he leaves. He takes care of everything, and that's how you make your brand.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it that way, but we each have our own personal brand as well. And that goes a long way, and you're building it every day. And we also sometimes don't have the best days. We know that. But that's, again, why we have checklists, why we have workflows. And maybe the pilot's tired too, but he's still going to go through that checklist. And before we start the engines or whatever, he's going to know that we're ready to go. Same with the surgeon. They're going to make sure. I've seen it on the whiteboards, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know they had checklists for surgery, but apparently they do. So yeah, it minimizes mistakes, but it also keeps you more focused on the task at hand or a series of tasks. In the end, you're going to get the fix, you're going to get the resolution, you'll walk away feeling confident. So
Yeah,
that's good.
definitely. Let's switch to a different topic, which is more about career. And what are your thoughts on challenges with a later, career later in life and changing careers? What do you face when doing something like that?
But I just went through that this past year, this current year. I just went through that, and um, yeah, the big one of the big challenges, and we're talking later in life as well, but in general, one of the big challenges is leaving company A to company B, and you're leaving the culture. You're leaving culture A and going to culture B. And there was a good book I was reading, the first 90 days, and it talks about also not only are you learning a new job, you're learning a new culture. And in learning the culture, you're learning the people, you're learning procedures again, how they do everything from expenses to time cards. That was a little more challenging than I thought it was this time around, because I was 8.5 years with my previous employer. So I was deeply embedded into the culture and the way of doing things. And you have to kind of clear your mind, or you have to start fresh. You can't hang on to certain ways of doing things, even though your mind wants to. It's like, well, that's not how we're doing it now. So you have to kind of refresh. The refresh on your screen, on your computer is almost the same. You got to refresh your culture view and habits, but also any kind of change like that later in life is you have to be very flexible, dynamic again, willing to change, willingness to change. Maybe that's a good way to look at it. Willingness to change. And as we get older, we are creatures of habit. We are people that, well, this is how I like to do things. I like to wake up, have a cup of coffee, and look at my emails. That's okay, but you have to be willing to change in a broader perspective, uh, and to become, I wouldn't, maybe not absorb, but you have to become a part of that new culture. See what I'm
Emerge.
trying to say? Yeah,
Emerge.
you have to
I think the
immerse
word you're looking
yourself.
for.
That's a good way to say it. You have to immerse yourself into the new culture, but you're learning the new culture. See, so it's not like, oh, you just flip a switch. It's like, oh, this is how we do things now. So I was, I wouldn't say struggling, but I was willing to change, but I was like, well, this is how, I was still having a little difficulty, but now I think I'm getting much better with it. So, willingness to change, immerse yourself in the new culture, learn the people, learn the management style, learn how your colleagues, learn the camaraderie, the teamwork. All that's going to be different. So you can't hang on to the past. You have to kind of move forward with the flow. And it can be challenging, but it's also, I think it's refreshing, it's rejuvenating.
Right.
It's kind of like a fresh start later in life. And the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I don't know about that. So, we're still out to lunch on that one. The jury's
Yeah,
out.
I agree.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's challenging, I would say, but it's also can be uplifting, and it's like a fresh set of spark plugs. All of a sudden you're
Yes.
like, okay, you know what I mean? Now we're firing something new. Now it opens up your mind too, because probably the worst thing, maybe the most dangerous thing in the career of field service is to become lackadaisical. In other words, to not thinking that you just know it all and that you don't need to change. Oh, I've been working on these things for 10 years. Well, the medical devices, they don't wait for us. They change and they evolve quickly and daily. And you have to stay on your toes. And if you remember the last time we talked, I had a good tip that I always say, it's nice to learn something new every day. And if you think about that, it's really not that hard to do
Mhm.
because we're surrounded by so much new technology, new information almost overload, where you have to cipher through again what you need for the task at hand. But there's so much out there. LinkedIn is one of the great resources. You join different groups and you can see different products and different companies. The newer technology now, ultrasound is handheld, plugged into your phone. Who would have thought that? I mean, it's just crazy stuff that is fun to keep up on. But yeah, you need to be willing to adapt and to change, and like you said, immerse yourself in the new culture. That's a big part of it. Not just the new job, but you're joining the new culture. So I hope I answered that question.
Oh, you did. You did very well. Actually, I referred to something you mentioned, which is willingness. When you come into maybe a new job in the same company or totally different company, and sometimes companies change leadership and new procedures are adopted. So it's really the willingness and the being open-minded
Yeah,
and tapping into your experience and knowledge and that excitement to learn something new and adopt it and apply it in your new job or new life even.
yeah. It's really important as you get older, and I'm going to segue a little bit. Alzheimer's, for example, is a horrible disease, and there's been a lot of studies on it. And I only speak English. I know a little bit of different languages, but for one thing, they say people that speak more than one language. I don't know if it's proven. Don't quote me or not, but they have less chance of developing maybe Alzheimer's or some of these dementia. And again, this is not gospel I'm saying, but you should always keep your mind active, whether it's crosswords or Sudoku or just I think keeping your mind active is very, very important as you get older. And I'll tell you what, when you change, not so much change careers, but just change companies and learn a new product, new equipment to work on, it really you have to kind of, like I said, restart, recycle, refresh, and be open to learn and be willing to change and evolve. Really, you want to evolve into the next new role, new procedure. So
Yeah,
that's a good topic. Sorry, I went into the Alzheimer's thing, but I think it's interesting that they're still trying to figure out why some people get it, why some people don't.
yeah.
And I think brain activity and keeping yourself busy and engaging yourself in different tasks or different hobbies is very, very important. So,
Yeah, and I will even say it applies to all ages. Even young people have to have the willingness and the open-mindedness to learn something new versus being, stuck in their ways. It's not only about age, although you and I are not in our 20s and we know something about aging. Uh,
yes.
but it does apply to almost everyone. Now, if we were to close our talk today, what is one thing maybe that you would like to share with the audience about your experience or medical devices or even field engineering?
No, one of my favorite stories is I might have mentioned it to you before, but I was working in El Paso at a hospital on an older Linac one day, and it was challenging machine. Um, it developed in England from previous Philips technology, but yeah, I was struggling with it. It was an older machine. It was cancer treating, Linac, linear accelerator. And again, we talked about stress management. I walked to the lobby to get a cup of coffee. I know they had pretty good coffee out there. And there was like 15 or 20 people sitting there. I'm like, we've only got one Linac. what are these people sitting here for? So I went up to the nurse. I said, hey, didn't you know the machine was broken? These people are. She goes, oh yeah, we know, Frank, but we knew you're going to fix it today. And I'm like, whoa. And
No
that was
pressure.
just, well, not only that, but it kind of like it was a reality check. Like, oh, those people are here because you didn't want to send them home because you have enough confidence that I'm going to fix the machine. And actually, at that point, I think I was rounding third base, heading home. I just kind of sorted it. I was just clean. I think I was cleaning things up, or I don't know where I was in the procedure, but I did get it resolved. I think within an hour or so. But her saying that to me was really uh, affirmation, maybe for the importance of what I do. And I never forgot that because she said it with such sincerity. Like, we know you're going to fix it, Frank. So we're not going to send anybody home. And by the end of the day, they were all treated. But it was just always bear in mind, what you do. If you're having a bad day or you're struggling or you're just like, why am I doing this? Why did I pick this career? You're affecting people and you're
Yeah.
affecting patients and at least, again, medical devices. But yeah, it was just one of those moments where, yeah, I drove home feeling pretty proud that day. And she helped to uh, reaffirm that there was a lot of trust and confidence, and we had a great relationship. And I was later told by my company that by the director, he goes, when you kept that machine in El Paso running, we knew you were a pretty good engineer, Frank. So I didn't know it was a test,
Mhm.
but it was, like I said, older machine, still did the job, but it was tricky, and you had to give it some TLC, but never forget why you're doing what you're doing
Right.
and why you're there.
Yeah, and
And that,
that's a very nice story to end our talk on. Frank, thank you very much for sharing this story and for sharing your experience and your
yes,
opinions and views. It was a real pleasure. Thank you for
thank you.
taking time with me today. And
Yes.
to our audience, thank you for your interest in our discussions. What did you think of our talk today with Frank? Do you agree with the viewpoints that we shared today? Please leave your comments. Let us know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the talk today, and we'll see you next time.